This story is titled, Nothing to be Thankful for in Bed. My wife mocked me at Thanksgiving, so I gave her a real shock. So I, 34 male, have been busting my ass at the district attorney's office for the past 8 years, working my way up from nothing. I started as an assistant DA right out of law school, handling misdemeanors and shit cases nobody wanted, and slowly climbed up to handling serious felonies. Not gonna lie, I played college football at State. Used to be in great shape. Had pro scouts looking at me until I blew out my knee senior year, but office life and a failing marriage slowly wore me down. My life before Sarah, my wife, 32 female, wasn't anything special. Grew up in a middle-class neighborhood with parents who worked their asses off to give me and my sister opportunities they never had. Dad was a postal worker, mom was a nurse. They pushed education hard, and I was the first one in my family to go to college. Met Sarah during my second year of law school when she was finishing her marketing degree. She was gorgeous, ambitious, and completely out of my league, or so I thought at the time. Looking back, I realize I was a fucking catch, on track to become a lawyer, former athlete, no baggage, but somehow she convinced me that she was the prize. Anyway, I was at Thanksgiving dinner with Sarah, surrounded by her family who always treated me like I was some kind of outsider. Sarah's family is all about appearances. Her dad's a doctor, mom's never worked a day in her life, and her brother Mike is some kind of investment banker who loves to talk about his fucking boat. Their Thanksgiving is always this formal affair where everyone pretends to be perfect while talking shit about people who aren't there. The turkey was dry as hell, thanks to Sarah's mom, Linda, who thinks salt is too spicy, but I was making the best of it. I was deep in conversation with Mike about the recent changes in state law, when suddenly Sarah's voice cut through the whole damn room. "Oh, come on," she said with this condescending smirk I'd grown to hate. "You guys should be thankful. At least you have something exciting going on. I can't say the same for what happens in our bedroom." The whole table went fucking silent. Then her cousin Tom started this awkward chuckle that spread around the table. I saw her mom purse her lips in that disapproving way, but she said nothing. Her dad suddenly became very interested in cutting his turkey. Mike had the decency to look embarrassed for me. I felt the blood rush to my face but kept it together. What was I supposed to do? 'Cause a scene at Thanksgiving? Make her look bad in front of her precious family? So I just took a long sip of my drink and acted like it didn't tear me apart inside. Tried to force a smile like, haha, yeah, good one, but I'm pretty sure it came across as a grimace. The conversation awkwardly moved on. Her Aunt Patricia started talking about some charity gala, and slowly the tension dissolved. But I wasn't really there anymore, you know? I was just going through the motions for the next 2 hours, nodding, fake laughing, refilling my drink glass way more than I should have. I caught Mike giving me a sympathetic look at one point. Even he, douchebag that he was, seemed to think Sarah had crossed a line. I just gave him a slight nod like, "What can you do?" and kept drinking. The thing is, this wasn't just a one-off comment. This was the culmination of years of this shit. Sarah had a pattern of humiliating me in public, but this was the most direct and degrading one yet. Usually, she was more subtle, little jabs about my career progress, my appearance, my family's background. But I guess she decided to go for the jugular this time. By the time dessert came around, I was mentally checked out. I remember staring at the pumpkin pie, thinking about how fucking miserable I was, and wondering when exactly I had become this shell of a person who just took this kind of treatment. And something snapped in me that night. Not in a dramatic, table-flipping way. More like a quiet realization that I wouldn't live like this anymore. After everyone finally left our house around 10 p.m., I was in the kitchen washing dishes, replaying that humiliating moment over and over. We have this nice suburban home that we bought 3 years ago, the kind with stainless steel appliances and granite countertops that Sarah insisted on, because that's what successful people have. Tonight, it felt more like a prison than a home. Sarah waltzed in, humming some song from the radio like nothing happened, collecting empty wine glasses. She still had her hostess smile plastered on, the one she uses for guests but never for me when we're alone. "So that little joke at dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I scrubbed cranberry sauce off a serving platter. "Was that really necessary?" She barely glanced at me, putting the glasses in the sink. "Oh my God, Jake, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke. Just a fucking joke. Right. Because publicly announcing to her entire family that I'm inadequate in bed is comedy gold. A joke about humiliating me in front of your entire family. Real hilarious, Sarah." I could hear the edge in my voice, but I was still trying to keep it together. She rolled her eyes and let out this exasperated sigh, like I was some oversensitive child she had to deal with. "Please, nobody even cared. You're acting like I committed some terrible crime. Everyone was laughing. It wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal to me. I turned to face her, still holding a soapy dish. How would you feel if I made a joke about your sexual performance in front of my family? That's different, she scoffed, grabbing a bottle of wine that still had some left in it. How is that different? It just is. She poured herself another glass. And anyway, your family would never have a fancy enough dinner for that scenario to even happen. And there it was. Another dig at my family, who she always thought were beneath her because my dad worked for the post office and my mom picked up extra nursing shifts to put me through college. My parents, who had been married for 35 years and still held hands, who might not have had fancy dinners, but never publicly humiliated each other. That's when it hit me. This pattern had been going on since we got married. The little digs about my salary, even though I made more than enough to support our lifestyle, comments about how I'd let myself go compared to her CrossFit buddies' husbands, always implying I wasn't good enough, always in front of people, never when we were alone, always setting me up as the punchline. You know what, Sarah? I'm done with this conversation. I put down the dish and dried my hands. You're incapable of understanding how your actions affect other people, and I'm tired of trying to explain basic human decency to you. Her eyes widened a bit. I rarely talked back to her like this. Wow, someone's being dramatic tonight. Is it that time of the month for you? She smirked at her own joke. I just stared at her for a moment, seeing her clearly maybe for the first time in years. She wasn't the beautiful, confident woman I'd fallen for in law school. She was mean, shallow, cruel even, and I'd put up with it for too long because I thought that's what a good husband does. You weather the storms, you compromise, you make it work. But the man staring back at me in the kitchen window reflection looked beaten down, a shadow of who I used to be. The guy who used to command a courtroom now couldn't even stand up to his own wife. The former linebacker who used to intimidate opponents across the line of scrimmage now hunched his shoulders and took emotional hits with no defense. I walked out of the kitchen without another word, leaving her with the rest of the dishes. Small rebellion, but it felt like a first step. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sarah was passed out next to me, wine and turkey doing their work. I kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about how we got here. It didn't start this way. First year of marriage was good. We were both building our careers, had great sex, talked about our dreams. But slowly, things changed. Sarah started hanging out with a different crowd, wives of doctors and executives who spent their days at spas and planning charity events they didn't actually care about. She got a job at a prestigious marketing firm and started caring more about appearances than substance. And me? I just wanted to do good work, make a difference as a prosecutor. I wasn't interested in office politics or climbing the social ladder. Sarah saw that as a lack of ambition, started making comments about how I should network more and dress better and aim higher. When I pushed back, saying I was happy with my career trajectory, she'd act like I was settling for mediocrity. I kept thinking about how Sarah had slowly chipped away at my confidence over the years, how she'd roll her eyes when I talked about my cases at work, how she'd joke with her friends about having to train me like a dog, how she'd compare me to her ex, Jason, who apparently was some kind of sex god according to her drunk stories at parties. Stories she'd tell while I was standing right there. And I just took it, made excuses for her. She had too much to drink. She's just joking around. She doesn't mean it. But lying there in the dark, I couldn't make excuses anymore. The Thanksgiving comment was just too much. I got up at 5 a.m. way before Sarah would wake up. Especially with the wine she'd had, she wouldn't be up until at least 10. I didn't bother being quiet. I just grabbed my gym bag that had been collecting dust in the closet for 2 years and headed out. My old college teammate Derek ran a boxing gym across town. We'd been close during college. He was my linebacker partner, had my back on and off the field. After my knee injury ended my potential pro career, he'd been there for me. But we drifted apart after I got married. Sarah thought he was a bad influence because he was single and ran a lowbrow business, her words. Last time I saw him was at a mutual friend's wedding 2 years ago, where Sarah had gotten drunk and made fun of his date's dress within earshot of everyone. The gym was in an industrial part of town, not fancy, but real. Heavy bags hanging from the ceiling, a ring in the center, weight racks along the wall. Smelled like sweat and determination. Walking in, I felt embarrassed. I used to bench 225 for reps, used to have a six-pack, used to command respect when I walked into a room. Now I was soft, tired, and pissed off. A few early morning regulars were already there, mostly guys who looked like they worked construction or other physical jobs, getting their training in before work. Some nodded at me, others ignored the newcomer. Derek was in the ring with some teenage kid, holding up focus mitts and shouting encouragement. He looked good, still built like a tank, but with some gray in his beard now. He spotted me and did a double take. "Jake! Holy shit, man!" Derek called out, ducking between the ropes and jumping down from the ring. "Thought you died? Or your wife put you on house arrest?" I forced a smile as he pulled me into a bear hug. "Something like that. Got time to help a has-been get back in shape?" Derek held me at arm's length, looking me up and down with a critical eye. I knew what he saw. I'd put on at least 40 pounds since college, most of it around my middle. My once broad shoulders now slumped forward, but there was no judgment in his eyes, just concern. "For you? Always, brother." He clasped my shoulder. "But what brought this on? Sarah finally give you permission to have a life again?" That comment hit deeper than he knew. "Something like that," I repeated, but there was an edge to my voice that made Derek raise an eyebrow. "All right then," he nodded, understanding without me having to explain. That was always our dynamic. He could read me better than most. "Let's get to work. Go change and we'll see what you remember." As I headed to the locker room, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Dress shirt straining at the buttons, dark circles under my eyes, a stranger looking back at me. But somewhere in that stranger's eyes, I saw a flicker of the old Jake, the one who didn't take shit from anyone, the one who fought for what he believed in. That was the moment I decided, really decided, that I was going to change. Not for Sarah, not to save my marriage, but for me. First week of training was absolute hell. My body screamed with every punch I threw. My lungs burned after just a few minutes of movement. My shoulders felt like they were tearing apart when I tried to do even a fraction of what I used to. I started coming in every morning at 5 a.m., putting in work before heading to the office. Then I'd come back after work for another session. The regulars started to recognize me, giving me nods of respect for the consistent effort. There was this one old guy, Frank, probably in his 60s but still built like a brick shithouse, who would sometimes give me pointers. "Twist your hips more on that right cross." Or, "Keep your guard up, son." Derek hooked me up with a nutrition plan. "You're eating like shit. That's half your problem," he told me bluntly. "All that takeout and processed crap is making you soft." I cut out all the processed shit Sarah kept stocking our pantry with. Started meal prepping on Sundays. Chicken, steak, fish, veggies. Sarah noticed but didn't say anything at first. Just watched me with this confused look as I packed my lunches instead of eating the takeout she'd order. "What are you doing?" she finally asked on the third Sunday of meal prep. "Making my lunches for the week," I said, without looking up from the containers I was filling. "Since when do you cook?" "Since now." She hovered in the kitchen doorway. "Is this some kind of New Year's resolution or something?" It was early December. Nope. She waited for me to elaborate, but I didn't. This was my new approach. Minimal engagement. No more long explanations. No more apologies for doing what I wanted. No more seeking her approval. After 3 weeks of consistent training and clean eating, I started seeing changes. My face looked less bloated. My clothes were a little looser. I had more energy. People at work commented that I seemed more focused, more assertive in court. One night, Sarah was waiting up when I got home around 9 p.m. She was sitting on the couch in the living room, still dressed in her work clothes, an empty wine glass on the coffee table. "Where have you been?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the edge in her voice. "Out," I said, heading toward the stairs to shower. "With who?" "Friends." She laughed. That mean little laugh she does when she thinks she's caught you in a lie. "What friends?" "You don't have friends," she said, but the laugh died when she saw my face. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to her. "I do now," I said, and continued up to the bathroom. I heard her follow me upstairs, hovering outside the bathroom door as I stripped off my gym clothes. "You've been acting weird for weeks, Jake. Going to the gym, cooking your own food, staying out late. What's going on?" I turned on the shower. "Nothing's going on. I'm just making some changes." "What kind of changes? Why?" I looked at her directly. Perhaps the first time in months I'd really held eye contact with her. "Because I want to." She blinked, surprised by the directness. Is this because of what I said at Thanksgiving? Are you still upset about that?" "I'm not upset about anything," I said calmly. "I'm just living my life." "But, Sarah, I need to shower. It's been a long day." I closed the bathroom door in her face. Another first. Usually I'd leave it open, let her come and go as she pleased, let her continue the conversation while I showered. Not anymore. I needed boundaries, and I was finally setting them. Later that night, she tried to initiate sex for the first time in months. I declined, saying I was tired from training. The look of shock on her face was almost comical. She wasn't used to rejection. "Are you serious right now?" she asked, propping herself up on an elbow. "Yeah, I'm beat." Good night. I turned away from her and fell asleep almost immediately, the exhaustion from the day's workout pulling me under. About 6 weeks into my new routine, I was down 25 pounds of fat, had put on some serious muscle, and was starting to look like my old self again. More importantly, I was starting to feel like my old self, confident, focused, in control. The changes weren't just physical. I found myself speaking up more at work, challenging senior attorneys when I disagreed with their approach to a case, offering my own strategies instead of just following orders. I reconnected with old friends from law school and college, guys I'd drifted away from because Sarah had always found them boring or beneath us. Christmas came and went. We did the obligatory family visits, but I kept emotional distance the whole time. When Sarah's mom made some passive-aggressive comment about my new appearance, I hope you're not getting too obsessed with the gym, Jake. Narcissism isn't attractive. I just smiled and said, thanks for your concern, Linda, and walked away to chat with Mike, instead of stewing in silent resentment like I would have before. I came home from a session with Derek one Saturday morning in January, and Sarah was in the kitchen making coffee. She turned and actually did a double take. Jesus, Jake, you look different. I grabbed a protein shake from the fridge. Yeah, she waited for more, but I didn't give it to her. That was our new dynamic. She'd fish for information, and I'd give her the bare minimum. It was driving her fucking crazy. She leaned against the counter, coffee mug in hand, studying me. The guys at the office must be giving you shit for getting so fit. I shrugged. Not really. Most of them have asked me for workout tips, actually. Oh. She seemed disappointed that there wasn't some negative consequence to my transformation. Well, some of the girls are coming over tonight for wine. You should join us. Translation. She wanted to show off the new me to her friends. Probably spin some bullshit story about how she encouraged me to get in shape. How it was her idea. Take credit for my hard work, just like she always did. Can't. Going to the Alvarez fight with Derek and the guys? Her face fell. You didn't tell me about that. Didn't know I needed permission, I said, heading upstairs to shower. It's not about permission, Jake, she called after me, irritation clear in her voice. It's about common courtesy, letting your wife know your plans. I stopped on the stairs and looked back at her. You're right. So as a courtesy, I'm letting you know I'll be out tonight. I continued upstairs, smiling to myself at the speechless look on her face. That night, I dressed in jeans that actually fit right and a Henley that showed off my shoulders. As I was grabbing my keys, Sarah intercepted me at the door. She was already dressed for her girls' night, wearing a low-cut top and full makeup. You look nice, she said, reaching out to touch my chest. Her eyes had that look, the one she used to get when she wanted something from me. Once upon a time, that look would have had me tripping over myself to please her. I stepped back. Thanks. Don't wait up. That was the first night I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear like I'd hurt her. Fear that she was losing control. Fear that the punching bag she'd been using for years was suddenly standing up straight and walking away. The next few weeks, her behavior shifted dramatically. She started texting me throughout the day, little messages asking how court was going, if I wanted her to pick up dinner, just checking in. Started dressing sexier around the house, walking around in those little shorts she knew I liked, forgetting to wear a bra under her t-shirt. Started asking about my cases, pretending to be interested. Started suggesting date nights, something she hadn't done in years. One night in February, she cooked dinner. Actually cooked, not just ordered takeout. Set the table with candles and everything. What's the occasion? I asked, loosening my tie as I came in from work. No occasion, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just thought it would be nice to have a real dinner together. We've both been so busy lately. Translation. You've been busy. I've been right here, waiting for you to go back to being my doormat. I sat down and took a bite of the salmon she'd made. It was good. She was always a decent cook when she bothered to do it, which was rarely. How was work? She asked, pouring me a glass of wine. Fine. Prepare for the Wilson trial. You? Oh, you know, the usual agency drama. She leaned forward, giving me a view down her blouse. Actually, I got some good news today. They're considering me for the creative director position. That's great, I said. And I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish her professional failure. Yeah, it would mean more money, more responsibility. I'd be the youngest CD they've ever had. She twirled her wine glass. We should celebrate. Maybe take a weekend trip somewhere? The Hamptons, maybe? I took another bite of salmon, considering my response. I don't think so, Sarah. I've got the Wilson trial coming up and I need to stay focused. Her smile faltered. Well, maybe after the trial then? We haven't been away together in ages. We'll see. She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Jake, I know things have been different between us lately. I feel like we're drifting apart. No shit, Sherlock. I miss you, she continued, her voice soft. I miss us. I looked at her hand on mine. Once, that touch would have sent electricity through me. Now I felt nothing, just a clinical observation. Her nails were freshly manicured. She was wearing the expensive perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary. Her wedding ring caught the candlelight. Sarah, I said, pulling my hand away gently but firmly. I appreciate the dinner, but I'm not sure what you're expecting here. I'm not expecting anything, she said quickly. I just want us to reconnect, to get back to how we were. And that was the problem. I didn't want to go back to how we were. Back to being the guy who took her shit with a smile. Back to feeling inadequate in my own home. I'm not sure that's possible, I said finally. Her face hardened for a split second before she controlled it. Why not? Because of one stupid joke at Thanksgiving? You're still hung up on that? And there it was. The real Sarah, breaking through the facade of the attentive, loving wife she'd been playing for weeks. It wasn't just one joke, Sarah. It was years of little cuts. Years of you putting me down, making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Years of me accepting that treatment, because I thought that's what marriage was. Compromising yourself until there's nothing left. She sat back, shocked at my directness. That's not fair. I've always supported you. No, you haven't. You've tolerated me when I did what you wanted, and ridiculed me when I didn't. That's not true. Her voice rose. I've stood by you when you settled for being just another prosecutor instead of aiming higher. I've introduced you to people who could help your career. I've tried to motivate you to be better. Motivate me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call publicly humiliating me? Making jokes about my sexual performance to your family? Comparing me to your ex? That's motivation? You're twisting things, she said, but her eyes shifted away from mine. She knew I was right. No, Sarah. For the first time in years, I'm seeing things clearly. I stood up. Thanks for dinner. I'm going to the gym. Of course you are, she muttered. That's all you care about now. I paused at the door. No, it's not all I care about. I care about my work. I care about my self-respect. I care about being around people who actually value me. The gym is just a place where I remember who I used to be before I let you convince me I wasn't enough. I left her sitting there, staring at the candles melting between us. About 3 months after Thanksgiving, I won a very important case. The evidence was circumstantial, but solid. I'd spent weeks preparing, staying late at the office, practicing my arguments with Derek, who turned out to be a great stand-in for a jury. Explain it to me like I'm a regular guy, not a lawyer, he'd say. When the verdict came in, guilty on all counts, it was vindicating. The victim's family hugged me, the DA clapped me on the back, and even the judge made a comment about the exceptional quality of the prosecution. The DA took the whole team out for drinks at Sullivan's, this upscale bar near the courthouse where a lot of lawyers hung out. I was enjoying the camaraderie with my colleagues when Sarah showed up uninvited. Surprise, she said, sliding into the booth next to me, putting her hand on my thigh in front of everyone. I thought I'd come celebrate with my successful husband. My colleagues looked uncomfortable. They'd never met Sarah before because she always declined my invitations to office events, saying they sounded boring, or that she didn't want to listen to lawyers talk shop all night. How did you know where we were? I asked. Oh, I have my ways, she giggled, but it sounded forced. She'd probably been tracking my phone or following my social media check-ins. The ADA across from me, Melissa, gave Sarah a tight smile. So you're Jake's wife. Nice to finally meet you. He did amazing work on the Wilson case. Of course he did, Sarah said, squeezing my thigh. I always knew he had it in him. Sometimes he just needs a little push, right, honey? I removed her hand from my leg. Would you excuse us for a minute? I said to my colleagues, then guided Sarah away from the table and toward the exit. Once outside on the sidewalk, I turned to her. What are you doing, Sarah? What? I can't be proud of my husband? She tried to put her arms around my neck, but I stepped back. Cut the bullshit. You've never cared about my work before. Her face hardened. What is your problem lately? You're never home, you barely talk to me, you're obviously working out for some reason. Her eyes narrowed. Are you cheating on me? Is that what this is about? You finally found someone who'll fuck you right? I actually laughed. That's rich coming from you. Her face went pale. What's that supposed to mean? I just stared at her. I'd seen the text from her friend Ryan when her phone buzzed one night while she was in the shower. I wasn't stupid. The late work meetings, the new lingerie I never saw her wear, the defensive way she guarded her phone. I had my suspicions for months, but hadn't confronted her because, honestly, I didn't care enough anymore. Nothing, I said finally. Go home, Sarah. I'm celebrating with my team tonight. I'm your wife, she hissed. You don't get to dismiss me like some Like what? Like how you've dismissed me for years? Like how you humiliated me in front of your family? Like how you've been treating me like I'm nothing but a joke since the day we got married? She stepped back, shock on her face. People entering and leaving the bar were starting to look our way. We'll talk about this at home, she said quietly. No, we won't, I replied. Because I'm done talking. I turned to go back inside, but she grabbed my arm. What does that mean? You're done talking. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. It means I'm done, Sarah. Done with the marriage, done with the mind games, done with feeling like shit every time I walk through our front door. Her grip tightened. You can't just be done. We're married. We took vows. Vows that included respect and fidelity, neither of which you've honored. She flinched at the mention of fidelity, but recovered quickly. So you're just going to throw away 6 years of marriage? Just like that? No, not just like that. After years of trying to be good enough for you and realizing it's impossible. After watching you flirt with other men in front of me. After hearing you make jokes at my expense to anyone who would listen. I removed her hand from my arm. You threw away our marriage a long time ago, Sarah. I'm just finally admitting it's over. She was crying now, but I knew those tears. They weren't sadness. They were frustration, anger that she wasn't getting her way. You can't do this to me, she said, her voice breaking. Not now. Not when I'm up for the CD position. Do you know how it will look if my husband leaves me right now? And there it was. Not, I love you, don't leave. Not, I'll change, I promise. But how will this affect my image? I don't care how it looks, Sarah. I don't care about your job or your image or what your friends will think. I care about the fact that for the first time in years, I feel like myself again. And that self deserves better than what you've been giving. I walked back into the bar, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, mascara running down her face. My colleagues pretended not to notice when I returned, but Melissa gave me a small nod of approval. For the first time in my adult life, I'd chosen myself over Sarah's demands. And it felt fucking amazing. 2 weeks later, I had moved most of my stuff into a new apartment downtown. It wasn't fancy, just a one-bedroom in an old building with exposed brick and tall windows. But it was mine. No designer furniture picked out by Sarah, no accent pieces that cost more than my first car. Just simple, comfortable stuff that I liked. I hired a divorce attorney, not someone from my office, but a guy Derek knew who specialized in cases where one spouse had significantly more assets than the other. Sarah had a trust fund I'd never touched, and family money that had paid for our down payment. I wanted a clean break, not a cent more than I was entitled to. Sarah had been in full panic mode, alternating between rage, tears, and desperate attempts to seduce me back. Nothing worked. I'd filed for divorce and her world was crumbling. She tried everything. Showing up at my apartment unannounced, I never let her in. Sending me lingerie pics at 2 a.m. I blocked her number except for necessary divorce communications. Even trying to get mutual friends to intervene. They mostly sided with me after hearing my side of the story. You're making a mistake, she said the one time I agreed to meet her for coffee to discuss logistics. We were at a neutral location, a Starbucks halfway between our house, well, her house now, and my apartment. We can go to counseling. I can change. It's too late for that, I said, sliding a folder with my proposed division of assets across the table. I think you'll find this fair. I'm not asking for alimony despite the income disparity. I just want my personal belongings and my half of our joint savings. She ignored the folder. Is there someone else? Is that what this is about? No, I said honestly. This is about me finally respecting myself enough to walk away from someone who doesn't respect me. That's not true. I respect you. You have a funny way of showing it. She tried to take my hand, but I pulled back. Jake, please, I love you. I know I've made mistakes, but everyone does. No marriage is perfect. I don't need perfect, Sarah. I just need basic decency. And you've shown me repeatedly that you're not capable of that. She started crying then. Not the fake tears from before, but real ones. Part of me felt bad for her, but then I remembered all the times she'd made me feel small, insignificant, worthless. My sympathy had its limits. Just look at the proposal, I said, standing up. Have your lawyer contact mine if you have any questions. I walked out, feeling lighter with every step. Sarah kept calling, kept texting, kept begging for help, for money, for connections, for anything. I ignored most of it, only responding when it was directly related to the divorce proceedings. Please, Jake, I can't make the mortgage payment this month, she texted in March. Sell the house, I replied. It's too big for one person anyway. My parents won't help me. They say I made my bed and now I have to lie in it. Sounds like good advice. How can you be so cold? After everything we've been through? I thought about that one before answering. I'm not being cold, Sarah. I'm being fair. You made choices. Those choices had consequences. I'm not responsible for fixing the problems you created. I thought you loved me once. I did, but you made it impossible to keep loving you. She didn't have a response for that. The last time I saw her was at the divorce proceedings in April, 4 months after Thanksgiving. 4 months that had changed my life completely. She looked terrible. Had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. Dark circles under her eyes, hair dull, designer clothes replaced by something off the rack. She tried to approach me afterward in the courthouse hallway. Jake, please. I have nothing left. I lost my job, my friends. I might lose the house. I need help. I looked at her for a long moment. Like you helped me when I was down? Like you built me up instead of tearing me down for laughs? I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. What more do you want me to say? Nothing, I said simply. I don't want you to say anything. I don't want anything from you at all. So that's it? 6 years of marriage and you're just done with me? Yes. I had no more anger, no more hurt, just a calm certainty that I was doing the right thing. Goodbye, Sarah. As I walked away, Derek was waiting by my car. He'd come for moral support, had been my rock through the whole process. All good, brother? He asked, eyeing Sarah, who was still watching from the courthouse steps. Yeah, I said, feeling the weight finally lift completely. All good. We headed to the gym. I had a new trainee waiting for me, some guy going through a rough divorce who needed to find himself again. Funny how life works out sometimes. 3 months later, I was officially divorced. Sarah had finally accepted the inevitable and signed the papers without further drama. I heard she had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. Had to get a job at a much less prestigious firm. Had to start over, basically. She still texts occasionally, especially when she's drinking. Sometimes begging, sometimes angry. I don't respond. Don't need to. My life is moving forward. Got promoted to senior prosecutor, dating a veterinarian named Megan, who actually respects me, and is a fucking smoke show. Not that that's the main attraction. And competed in my first boxing match in 10 years last month. Didn't win, but went the distance with a guy half my age, which felt like victory enough. Last week, I ran into Sarah's brother Mike at a bar downtown. Expected it to be awkward, but he surprised me. Hey man, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. You look good. Thanks, I said cautiously. How have you been? Good, good. He hesitated. Look, I know things ended badly with you and my sister, but I want you to know, that Thanksgiving shit, that wasn't cool. I should have said something. I shrugged. Water under the bridge now. Still, he ordered us both a beer, but I refused and asked for something without alcohol. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Sarah, she's always been like that. Even when we were kids, she'd put other people down to make herself feel better. She doing okay? I asked, more out of politeness than actual concern. She's surviving. Had to swallow her pride and take a job at a smaller agency. Living in some apartment out in the suburbs, parents are still giving her the cold shoulder. He took a sip of his drink. But honestly, maybe it's good for her. She's never had to face consequences before. We chatted a bit more, then parted ways amicably. It felt like closure somehow. Some guys at the gym tell me I should feel bad for Sarah, that karma hit her too hard. But I don't. You reap what you sow in this life. She spent years tearing me down, and when I finally stood up and walked away, her whole carefully constructed world fell apart. That's not on me. And me? I'm finally harvesting the respect I should have demanded years ago. From others, sure, but more importantly, from myself. So if you're in a relationship where someone makes you feel small, where they use you as a punchline, where they slowly chip away at your self-worth, know that you can walk away. It won't be easy. It won't happen overnight. But on the other side of that hard decision is a life where you recognize your own value. And no joke, no matter how many people laugh at it, is worth sacrificing that.